Those familiar with my channel will know that I mostly use single pigment paints for the bulk of my work. But other than Chimera and Instar, most paint lines for miniatures aren't sold in single pigments. They're full of proprietary blends. So in this video, I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of blends. It's the last month for the Blessed Sisters from One Page Rules, so I figure I'm going to send them off by just trying to paint one nicely. But instead of using my normal paints, I'm going to brush off my old set of scale 75. These Sister Destroyers are probably my favorite from this month's set. A lot of fabric and much larger than normal troopers, so they should paint up really well. I'm not huge on the conspiracy theories, but there is something about miniature paint lines that I do think people should wake up to. And it's that even if you have a shelf of 100 different colors, they were all probably made using a quarter of that amount of pigments. There are only so many pigments in the world that can be used to make paint. They come from natural sources or are made synthetically. But other than a few slight deviations, they don't cover that much of the color spectrum individually. So to get some colors, they have to make blends by mixing one or more pigments until they get the desired colors they're after for their paint line. And a lot of the time, bright colors are made bright by just adding white. So all those pastels and light blues are just white with other colors. And I know we know this because if you've ever bought house paint, you can buy a big can of white or clear paint, take it to the counter, give them the card for the color you want, and they'll fill it with a bunch of other colors from a selection of about 20, and then mix them to get your resulting color. So to define what a blend is it's just a pre-mixed color, sold to you as a single color. The first thing that makes blends a good thing is that, well, you don't have to know how to mix in order to get the colors that you want. Something like this olive green is made from yellows and browns, which just sounds confusing as all heck, because how do you even get a green from something that doesn't have either blue or green in it? Exactly. I don't have to think in this case, just use the dang green that I've got. And that also leads to the other really nice thing about them, and that is they're consistent. Maybe not always from bottle to bottle, as they are a mix of colors. Sometimes that mix can be a little different per batch, but it's not going to be as inconsistent as mixing them each and every time I need that color. So for what we do, painting massive armies in uniform colors, having that from the bottle consistency is perfect for keeping a standard. And while this isn't a historical figure, that is another place they make a lot of sense. If you want the right color for an Allied General's World War II uniform, someone out there has already done the hard work of getting you an exact color match for it. The other thing I like about blends is that they're easy to decontrast, as it were. You can grab 3 different tones, a dark, a medium, and a light, and if the contrast between them is too great for what you want, like this cloth for me, you can mix between them at about 50-50 and remove some of that contrast. So that if I just want to use these median colors, I'll never accidentally go too dark or too light. Which, if you've seen some of my other videos, you might notice happens all the time. I'm always putting in more white than I need and getting too big of a difference between layers to get a smooth transition. That's not so easy to do when you're mixing blends. The other thing you might notice about blends is that they have a better overall opacity than single pigment paints. That's because by mixing a transparent paint with a more opaque paint, the overall opacity is improved. And when mixing blends with 4 or more pigments in it, it improves it even more. So while the concept might not affect all of them, vibrant reds and yellows are always just going to be semi-transparent, blend creators can use more opaque colors to boost more transparent ones in their blends. I have to be on camera for this bit because I need to show off this set. It's a full 48 color paint set
But this is the only brown in it. Luckily, I have other browns to pick from, but it highlights my first bad thing about sets of blends.
Now this is just my opinion, but because of the way we get sold different tones as different colors, a lot of sets get filled with colors that could easily be made by just mixing in white, which means less of the other options that could have been used to fill in gaps in the spectrum. My assumption would always be that if you're buying a set of 48 paints, you should be able to make all the colors from that set of 48. But because of the way blends mix, that's not always the case. If you take a single pigment and mix it with another single pigment, you get a vibrant version of that mix. But if you take two blends and mix them, now you have 4 or more total pigments in that mix, which can dull and neutralize each other.
So back in this set, well, I could make a lot of browns by mixing black into all of these yellow and orange shades.
I have less predictability of the outcome by doing that because of the blue tint of the carbon black. Some could end up more green than brown depending on how much yellow was used in the mix. So with just the starter sets for some of these paint lines, which usually have a red, a yellow, a blue, a brown, a green, etc., if all of those are some form of blend, it may actually be impossible to mix certain colors. Whites already have been added to the blue and the green, so have to be darkened with black. Or there's only one version of a yellow and it's warm, paired with a slightly cool red.
It's not a huge deal when you can just buy the rest of their line. But that leads me to I have a lot of paint. And I have a lot of paint because before I knew about pigments and how we get paint colors, I bought into the idea that when I needed a different shade of orange, I had to buy one, which can make this hobby seem really expensive when the introduction to it is usually a rack of more than 100 pots of paint. You know the one.
When in reality, with about 16 single pigment paints, we could end up with a much wider spectrum of colors available at a much lower cost. But that isn't even to say that we don't need the blends. There's lots of blends I still use for ease of use, like skin colors or shaded grays. Even Chimera, the champions of single pigment paints in the hobby space, have signature blends. It's just that it ends up being a trap, where we think we need a whole set of 40 to 60 paints for hundreds of dollars and miss the step where we learn to mix paints and colors ourselves, which is such an integral part of painting as a hobby when your goal is to improve. But I'm not here to shame, and if you're happy with your skill level and just want to get things painted with the least amount of fuss, blends are the way to go. Just pick your colors and get to painting. Though there is one other unforgivable sin to me, and I don't mind shaming paint companies over it, and it's the idea of proprietary blends, where a mix of colors is such a secret they won't even tell you which pigments they used. I mean, fine, keep your secrets. But before buying paint, I'd like to know that I'm not wasting my time by looking at a blend I could easily make with the paint I already have. So let me save you about $4. If you want a pastel or a sky blue, just add some white. In the end, I'm not here to police how anyone decides to paint their models or what paint they should be using. If you like just testing different paint lines or like particular colors, then great, you keep at it. But if you're on a tight budget, or if you're looking to get some more colors to supplement your already massive library, I'd consider single pigment paints first, then start selecting blends after. Because real power comes from using them in tandem. By having those raw pigments, you can really control the blends with more predictable mixing outcomes. And by having the blends, you can really make painting your favorite colors easy and quick to do. This month on my Patreon, I've got a unique figure for everyone to get a hold of and follow along with painting. A crab trucker by Manuel Herrera. A silly little concept that seemed quite fun to the both of us. Sea creatures and freight trucks aren't something often seen smashed together, but we've done it here. It also comes with an exclusive painting video that goes with it that explains in detail how I painted the stripes on his shirt. So get the pre-supported STL and video in the Expedition tier on my Patreon at patreon.com/paintmanjourneying. Find the link in the description. Please subscribe if you like this video, and check the link in the description to my Discord where I talk all sorts of nonsense about miniatures painting, provide critique on paint jobs, and occasionally stream.